Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are still with Andrea Adams, Dr. Andrea Adams, and we are going to talk about leadership and its application and its development and its application in particular to the emergency management profession and its application and skills development into the professional who needs to be applying these skills. And I call them skills. I've actually started more referring to them as art. Leadership is an art, communication is an art, influence is an art. And these are things that we need to hone and get better at. And we all express that in different ways. And I wanted this conversation with Dr. Adams to bring some insight into leadership, how we can better apply it, what we can learn. We can learn from her in many ways. From leadership. She has stepped into leadership roles, whether she wants to boast about them or not. She's definitely a leader in emergency management. She's a leader in the ethics in the ethics field in general. She just won an award that I'm like ecstatic to hear about, and I want her to be able to tell us about and hear in detail the efforts that went behind winning that award. But ultimately, Dr. Adams, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and talk about this subject, and to just bring your insights and in this discussion to the practitioners who will benefit from it.
So so let's talk about the award. And so let me just say that I didn't win the award. The organization that I worked with won the award. And so I worked for an organization. I am one of the principals at, it's called Red Dot Foundation. It was started in India by a woman. Her name is Elsa Marie de Silva. And it is a platform that maps gender-based violence. And so in my work in criminal justice, violence prevention has been an area that we have looked at. I have taught a class on data issues in criminal justice, data privacy issues in criminal justice. And so the Red Dot Foundation launched this platform in 2012. And we have mapped over 50,000 incidents of sexual assault. Anybody can download the app, and what they're mapping is not just things like violent sexual assault, but they're mapping groping, and they're mapping things like catcalling and whistling and all of these things that happen to both women and men, which is really interesting, in the public spaces. And what that does is, one of the things that we know in criminal justice is that people don't report those things to the police. And so the police really have no idea from a resource perspective how to address these issues. And if these issues aren't dealt with, these issues become the more violent things that we see that police actually do have to deal with. And so by mapping this, what we've done is, it's not just the assaults themselves. There's a narrative that goes with it that we capture. All of the information, all the data is anonymous. And so we're not picking out perpetrators, and people aren't going to the police. We're actually trying to capture and raise awareness about what's going on in public spaces. And what's exciting about what we've been able to do is, for example, in some areas, we found that street lighting that was out was creating an environment where people could sexually assault women. And so by going back to some of the public works areas, putting in lights, doing little things that reduce the prevalence of those kinds of issues has been very powerful. And we've seen it happen all over the world. And so we're just launching it in the United States. We're just kind of starting it, but it's in Croatia, it's in Jordan, it's in Kenya, it's in all these different places. And so we were one of the finalists for the World Justice Forum. It was in the Netherlands. And we won the award, and we were one of the finalists that won the award. And so we are just very proud of that. and I was able to be there and be a part of that process. And so, like I said, we're continuing to work on that and continuing to see if we can positively impact sexual violence in public spaces. Now, there's this whole thing about domestic violence. We're not really in that space, though we have received reports from people in that space, but we're really looking at public spaces. So that's part of what I've been doing.
Well, Dave, thank you for sharing that with us. Congratulations to you and the organization for that honor. I look forward to any support I could give you in your efforts, and that's something that if I can share with the participants of the podcast or the summit in general, I would love to do that as well. So thank you for sharing that with us. And your leadership, I can tell you without knowing much, played a big role in that. So, and having worked with you for a few years, and the efforts that you intentionally take when it comes to whether you want to or not, you step into whether you're voluntold or a need needs to be filled, have showed great leadership, intention, initiative, and the efforts and the ultimately the product that came out of those has been amazing. And that comes and relates back to the ethics special interest groups that we sit on, and everything we did in the release of the code of ethics, but also we did an ethics day, which was great, and that was an effort that you held. So in your efforts to bring the leadership capacity of ethical application forward, how is it that we can apply those in a more proactive manner as leaders?
So great question. So I have I taught this did this seminar on responsible leadership, and we were talking about how leaders what leaders should be focused on, how they need to be proactive. And one of the things that came out of that discussion that we had, well, two things. One is that if you don't have any followers, you are not a leader. And I say that tongue in cheek. There is a caveat to that. But in leadership, you need to be thinking about who you are leading. Who are you responsible for? And it's not just the individuals, but it's the scope of what the individuals are responsible for. And so when you're leading, you're sitting in a place where you're helping to direct others in a way that delivers the best for the whole. And so leadership can happen anywhere. Leadership is not something that you have to be given authority in order to be a leader. You can be a leader with no authority. And we see that happening all around. When somebody says, hey, I'll do that, that's taking a leadership role in whatever the process is. So, I said before in tongue in cheek that if you don't have any followers, you're not a leader. There was a study done saying that 85% of leadership is you leading yourself. And so one of the most important things about being a leader is being able to lead oneself. And then you mimic that so that others can lead themselves in a way that's coordinated so that you can achieve whatever goal that you're doing. Because empowering your followers is the best way to be a good leader, because you're responsible for the whole. And being responsible for the whole, you're not going to do the whole. A lot of leaders are micromanagers, right? They go and they try to do what they've given people responsibility to do. But leadership is really understanding oneself and then helping to empower others in a way that delivers for the whole. I think that leadership is kind of it's a real it's something that you embrace, because the work of a leader is hard. It is not, you're just the one somebody points to. The work of a leader is hard. So not only do you have to lead yourself, and you have to provide a way for others to lead themselves, you have to embrace the total responsibility for it.
And yeah, that's perfect. I always say that leadership itself is simple, but it's not easy, because it takes a lot of intention and intentional effort to do it. It's a purpose that you really embrace when you're doing it. And I really like, the leading yourself. That's an amazing enlightenment for me as well, because a lot of it is what we invest in ourselves, right? We can invest in others, and what we believe in ourselves, we can instill that belief in others. But one of the things that really stuck out to me too is that, and I heard it put this way by John Maxwell, and it was a great analogy. And ultimately, a leader goes to their followers. They don't expect the followers to come to them. And they say, well, if it's lonely at the top, you're not a leader, you're a hiker at that point, because you're away from your people, the people that you're supposed to be serving, in leadership and service. So that's a great analogy. I appreciate that, especially as leading oneself, and I think all those that are listening or watching are going to benefit from that, because taking that self-initiative to grow and to do that in a way that benefits you in the service of others. And I tell people this: I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I'm doing with the purpose of serving others, but it benefits me because I grow as an individual. So that's an aspect of what I'm doing, and that's why I think it's so important as individuals that we serve others, especially as emergency managers. That's our job. We have an ethical, moral obligation to do our job well. And in order to do that job well, we have to become leaders, people of influence, people that people look to and they trust the decisions that we're making. And this comes from the efforts that we take and the time we put in, as we alluded to a little earlier. So the time aspect of things and the intention aspect of things, where have you found that the best application of those are put when it comes to leadership?
So, I have a lot of, there's a lot of models out there of what we would consider great leadership. But mostly, from my perspective, the intention around why you're together as leader and followers. And, you talked about purpose. What is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? And letting that, whatever that achievement is, even if it's a modest achievement, let that be something that the whole gets to celebrate and use as motivation for the next level. You have to be intentional about what part you're leading. You're not leading everybody's life. You're leading around a particular specific objective goal that you're working with. So if you're an emergency manager, you're leading around an effective response to a disaster. What does that look like? Well, if Johnny is a jokester and he's always cracking up and everything like that, but he's bringing levity to the environment, and his skill is not just, I'm going to do my work, but I'm keeping everybody up. You have to recognize that as a leader, as a good part of the whole, even though you may have to call him in check every once in a while, because of course that's not appropriate all the time. But a leader sees the good, the strength, the abilities of those who have been assembled, and lets that, it's almost like you have to kind of let a little bit of that go, so it makes the whole thing work. The other thing a leader does is, if you see a part that's not working, you cannot just let that sit there, because it will destroy whatever else you have going. If you're riding on three wheels and the other wheel is riding on the pavement, you're not going anywhere. and we think about, oh yeah, well, he's okay. If you're a leader, you have the courage to say, this is not working. This is not working in the whole, and doing something about it. So a leader has to be intentional about what is the whole, what needs to happen for it to work, and then looking at the various parts and saying, well, this person doesn't trust. How can I help that better? This person is lacking some skills. I'm sending them to training. We need some team building because we're not working well as a whole. Let's get somebody in to help us do that. The leader is always looking at the whole and saying, where does it need help? Where do I need to support or change, so that whatever that goal is going to be achieved?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think the vision of the whatever it is that you're working on has to be one of those that the leader has the vision. They see for the big picture. They're usually at a looking at it at a higher level, but they ensure that the team that they represent sees that vision, but they see it at a much tactical level on what the steps that needs to be done to achieve the overall goal. And you've worked on many initiatives, and you've done many things. What is some of the things that you've applied when it comes to ensuring that some of your vision gets seen?
For me, it's communication. It's having discussions with folks about what they see, how they understand it. It's really understanding whoever my stakeholders are. So one of the things that I did before I was a professor was I was an executive coach, and I would coach individuals who are on leadership teams about things like leadership. And so what's really interesting about that is the fact that leaders really have to understand how they're built, so that they can understand what they need to shore up their abilities so that they can be effective. And I think that one of the ways of communicating purpose and making sure that people understand that vision is to, the Bible says to, write the vision on tablets and make it plain. And that's really, if I could reduce it down to that, that's what it is. It's writing it on, communicating it and making it plain. Because if you don't make it plain, if you don't make it so people can understand it, then you're going to have an issue going forward, because people are going to miss out on it.
And that's a great point too. And I'm just hitting my desk. That's a great point too. And I really enjoy knowing that you were an executive coach. That is an amazing find out for me right now, because that's what I feel like in a lot. We need to switch the way we do business in emergency management, and it just as in the word is that we should apply it in more of a business manner, but more in so of marketing. I am getting I am researching it I have gone into depth doing. I'm going to become a marketer if I haven't already, because I'm still learning. I'm still doing everything I can to be better at what it is that we do. But it's letting other people know what it is, and the way we do that is marketing of ourselves, of our profession, of our needs, of the way people can support. So ultimately, I think we need to change the way we do things as a profession. And every time I say profession, that's loosely because we haven't really established ourselves as a profession yet. So that's one of those areas in which that we need to change the way we do, but it starts with us, right, as individuals.
Right,
and
right.
That's really one of the things that I'm trying to push home with the aspect of leadership, is that it's an intention of going to the people and letting them know why you're there, that you care for them, and how they can help themselves, how they can help you, how they can support you, why it's important. All these things are related out to the people that you are serving, in a manner. But the skill aspect of that, we go back to, right, the art of communication, of influence, of building trust are things that we have to do intentionally.
Yes, we
And
do.
it doesn't happen overnight. It's one of those things that trust in itself, or influence, I should say, influence comes from trust, and trust comes from time.
Mhm.
So in order for us to build that trust and that influence with the communities, the organizations, the people we serve, we have to be intentional about it and be trustworthy in everything that we do. And that communication aspect is huge. But as I go back to, and I'm trying to get myself into transitioning from the word skill to the word art, because it is an art. Everybody has their own way of doing things, right? And you basically shape that, you paint it, you sculpt it to your vision of it, but ultimately the others see that and say, yeah, that's a great art, right? So
Mhm.
that's, he did a good job, or she did a good job, or they are doing a great work. And that's what I want to see from those who are practicing emergency management and homeland security, any real profession, really, that they're doing their job the best they can. So in your ways of really building that communication, where do you find it, or what do you find, you should say, is the best approach to really opening up that line of trustful communication?
So at some point, the notion of trust is it's a gamble. So if I need to, I need to extend trust. As a leader, I extend trust so that I can gain a relationship, and I can build momentum around trust so that followers can trust me. But I've got to extend it first. And like I said, when I say it's a gamble, I say it from the perspective that I don't know whether I'm going to get it back. And so a lot of times people don't trust because they've been burned, or they've trusted before and somebody let them down. And so they're not extending any trust. And so as a leader, I've got to sit in that seat and extend trust. That's part of what I do. That goes along with, if somebody is not performing, I can do something about it because I've already trusted them to do their job in the way it needs to be done. Do you get burned when you do that as a leader? All the time. So you have to have some thick skin around that. But trust is really somebody having enough faith in you to let you do what you say you're going to do. And then being able to look at you and say, wow, they did it. And so now I can trust them to do something else. Nobody wants to be the first to extend trust because, like I say, you get burned. As a leader, you just have to do it. That's one of those downsides is you get burned a lot because you're trusting people and they let you down. But sometimes they knock it out of the park, and it reflects on you in such a positive way, and it also makes you feel great.
It makes you proud of them as well, as the people that are in your care, and knowing that you care about them and you want to share in their success as well. So that's an amazing aspect, and beautifully said. I want to transition real quick to talking about the ethics and action aspect of leadership, and how that could be applied better in leadership, or at all in really leadership, whether it's better or not, just the application of it in general in the initial part of in our decision making as leaders. So I'm going to open that up to you for your insight.
Okay. So I'm so excited about ethics in action. I think that's when we were developing the standards, we kept asking ourselves, how are people going to put this into practice? How are people going to put this into practice? And we decided to come up with an ethics in action for each standard. And the ethics in action actually gives an example about how that particular standard might be applied in practice. And we envision ethics in action as a living document, living by the means that as other ideas come to us about its application, or it gets refined about how we think about it, this document can continue to live with different examples. And so emergency managers see the standard, and then they say, okay, so what does that mean? There's an example there that they can look at and review and say, oh yeah, that makes sense. We know that from that perspective, what's going to happen is people are going to be able to see visualize the standard in terms of how it's applied. And then they're going to question, they're going to challenge, which is what we want. What we said and how we said it. All of these become discussions about how to become a professional, because we know that we have to adopt standards, and we know that we need to be able to show those standards to others so that others can say, oh, wow, if they're going to do this, then I trust them. Just based upon the standards, which is what professions do, then this document becomes this wonderful way of guiding emergency managers into the profession. And so I'm a lawyer, and lawyers have professional standards that we have to follow. And my example that I use all the time is, lawyers cannot commingle funds. So if I have fees and I get a settlement for somebody, I can't put those monies in the same bank account. That is a strict standard. I cannot do, there's no excuse for that. And so what that does for the people that come to me, they say, wow, I don't ever have to worry about this person taking the money that goes to me and putting it into their account, because the standard is strict on that. And so what happens is people can then start to rely on emergency managers to work at this high level of practice, because the standards say you can't do that. And whoever is an emergency manager then says, okay, I know I can't do that. I can't take the donation from Walmart and put a couple of bottles in my trunk, because there's a standard that says I can't do that. When in fact, it might be okay in some situations, but the person's not going to take that on. So I digress. I get real excited about these standards because this is what's going to guide people's practice. And then when they come up with a situation that is going to be more art than skill, they'll have some guidelines already pumped into their head about how that's going to work. So then the next thing I'll say real fast is we are going to be developing some training around the standards. And so that's the next exciting thing that I'm working on.
Oh, that's awesome. And I really look forward to that. But I just wanted to touch real quickly on the ethics in action, is that it can be also in many cases a place for reflection. Some of the scenarios and stuff like that, they someone can look at that and say, I was actually been in that situation, or I experienced that event based on whatever the scenario may be. I mean, some of these you mentioned 5 days of memorial is so that's that is a case study that has been done. I've read it. I've watched a presentation on it. And I'm glad to hear there's a movie coming out on it. That's pretty cool. I'll actually watch that. But it's based on decisions that there are situations that's already happened that we have then dissected and said, these are situations that we really need to look at moving forward, because we're going to be experienced with them again. We know that. And if we are, then we need to make different decisions based on the information that we currently have. So that's a big thing, reflection. And I still look forward to the training aspect of things. Big on training, big on, ultimately just continue education. But this is a very important, an ethical standard for the profession. That's a very important thing. And everything that's going to come behind that it's going to really shape not only the profession, but the professional that's applying it. So thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to share on that before I move on?
So I'm going to recruit you for the group that we're pulling together in the next probably month or so to talk about what kind of training we can do and how we pull it together. And I think you would be a great asset to be a part of that, since you love training. And if there's anybody else who's in emergency management who would be interested, if you provide my information to them, they can reach out to me directly. This is probably going to start in September or October, after the semester starts and after we kind of get our feet wet. But we will be working on that and hopefully be doing some of that next year sometime. So we're real excited about not just having the ethics in action and having it be living, but engaging, continuing to engage the profession in discussions about this important topic.
Well, I welcome and accept the recruitment. Absolutely, would be pleased to take part in that. For all those who are watching or listening, I will put the link for be able to reach out and express your interest if that's something you want to do. I think that's a great opportunity for anyone who is watching or listening. That would be finds itself, this is something, an avenue they'd like to go down or learn more about. I absolutely will share that information, and I look forward to continuing the efforts of this program. So thank you for that invite. That's amazing. And just ultimately, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today, to share your insights with those who are taking part in the summit. Time is our most valuable resource. And for you to give me some and give our participants some, it is amazing. And I just thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching and listening, if you don't know how impressive Dr. Adams is, she has her MBA, her Juris Doctorate, and a PhD, and she does all these other things to contribute to the field in which she represents. So talk about a true leader. Dr. Adams is a leader. She's a very modest leader. But she is absolutely a leader, and she embraces it, I'm sure, internally, because she doesn't really embrace it externally. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's always amazing to talk to you and have these conversations with you. And I look forward to what we're going to be doing in the future.
Yes, and we can do this again when you like.
Awesome. For all those who are watching, thank you very much. If you found the content here valuable, please like, comment, share, reach out to me, DM me. Please check us out on the Theory into Practice, the podcast, but also enjoy the rest of the summit.